Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a sensitive subject, but a subject that I feel like I need to talk about regardless of it being difficult or not. So today I will be talking about how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints pretty much encouraged me to stay in a relationship with an abusive drug addict, knowing that he was a drug addict, knowing that he was physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. So, first, a little bit, I want to give you a little bit of a background so you know where I was at when I met my husband. So, I had been living in Utah and I had to go back home to Colorado because my grandfather was becoming abusive towards my grandmother again, and my brother had a drug problem that my mom just could not handle on her own. So I ended up moving back to Colorado from Utah very quickly. It was like an overnight type of decision. I was like, okay, I got the call that they didn't know what to do anymore, crying. So I was like, okay, I have to go. And I came. So by the time I had met my ex-husband, I had already been through everything with my grandma and my grandpa, and we finally had my grandmother safe. She was completely separated from him. He wasn't allowed to come around anymore. My brother was clean, and he was living out in the valley in between the mountains, so he was doing good. And since I had been planning on going to school in Utah, so that way I could get a music degree and try out for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, because that is what I really wanted to do. I decided that, well, since I'm not going to be able to go to school there right now, I should just enroll in at least one class. So I decided to enroll in a music class. So that's where I met my husband. But before I met him, after coming back to Utah, or coming back from Utah, I was in my home ward again where I had been baptized and everyone knew my story. So when I got home, I, told everyone I was back, and I got a blessing from somebody because of everything I was going through. I just needed some sort of encouragement or something. So I got a blessing, and in this blessing, the brother who gave it to me said something about I would be meeting a young man who would be significant in my life very soon at some point in my future. So all that happened before I took this music class. So when I took this music class and I met my ex-husband, there were certain things that I had said, okay, I'm not going to be interested in a guy unless he ticks these boxes these times. Because at this point, I had already been through, the Mormon dating, and I was like, this is not working for me. I don't feel comfortable with this. So I decided I was going to have my own criteria, because, maybe I would meet somebody who actually was on my level, who I felt like we were compatible. So he checked these certain boxes, and we started to date. So we had been dating for, I don't know, I want to say probably about a month. And, there had been some signs like something was going on. I couldn't really trust everything that he said. And I'm like, this is getting iffy. And he confessed to me that he had a drug problem. So, you know, they always encourage you, if something's going on, you go talk to the bishop, because the bishop is the mouthpiece for God. He's the direct line to God. So whatever the bishop says, that's what God would want. So I went and I talked to the bishop, and I was like, Bishop, okay, I just went through this, this, and this, and this with my grandfather and my brother getting clean, and it was difficult. It was difficult to deal with both of those, especially at the same time, because I was dealing with them at the same time. My bishop knew about what I was going through because I had told him, you tell the bishop everything. So I'm telling him, like, I'm involved with this guy right here. I believe he's the one from the blessing, because there's no one else that has come forth, or that has come into my life, he's ticking these boxes. You know, he was interested in the gospel. He wanted to come to church. He was asking me questions about the Book of Mormon, and that was a big deal to me because even dating people who had been on missions or been members forever, like, I could never talk to them about scriptures, about deep stuff. They always, just wanted to get into physical type things. And so he ticked all these boxes, and I'm like, but Bishop, he just confessed to me that he's got this drug problem. And I'm involved with him now. My heart is involved. And, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to, be his friend and help him get through this? Am I supposed to, continue in this relationship with him? And I kid you not, and I loved my bishop. I loved my bishop. He was awesome. But looking back, I'm like, why? Why did he think that what he said to me was okay? Why did he think that encouraging me was okay? But he said that I had been brought into my ex's life so that way I could bring him to the gospel and I could help him get through this trial. And that's why I was with him and I was meant to be with him for that reason. So I stayed with him, knowing that he had this drug problem. Now, I'm pretty sure that if I didn't have this mindset, I gotta go ask the bishop, I'd have thought to myself, get out of here. Why would you stay with someone who has a drug problem? That makes no sense whatsoever. But alas, I stayed. And I should have known better because my mom did not like him from the moment she met him. Now, my mom was not a member of the church. She did not join. She told me that I was joining a cult and, joked about me having to share my husband and all that kind of stuff. But she did help me with my callings and whatnot. And she liked that, the good change that happened in my life for me because she saw the bad road that I was on. So she was supportive. But she met him. She did not like him. I should have known because my mom has this sort of sense about other people when she first meets them. She knows whether or not they're good or not. And she knew right away. And me just thinking, oh, she's just saying that because she's my mom. She's not going to like anybody that I'm going to be with because she didn't like anybody that I was with. She had something to say about everybody. I'm sure like all moms do. So I should have known. She's like, no, he's not for you. She said a couple other things that were, judgmental and a bit rude. But, looking back, I'm like, yeah, she was right. I should have listened. So, like I said, he was interested in coming to church. So he started coming to church with me. And I had already told the bishop about him. So he knew. I had talked to the missionaries because I was like, this guy that I'm dating is coming to church. I didn't tell him about his problem, but I said he's coming to church with me. Now he's going to have questions and he's going to be interested, but please, when you talk to him, please do not ask him the first time you talk to him if he will get baptized. Please don't do that. And they said, okay. Now, little did I know that that's what missionaries are taught, to ask that question on the first visit, on the first time you talk to somebody and they're like, seem like they're a good candidate for it. Like, that's something that they do. I didn't know that. So I'm asking them not to do this thing that they're taught to do. And they're like, okay, yeah, we won't ask him that. And then the lesson comes and we're sitting in my house and, they're asking us, well, so he lives here because he had started to live with us at that point, and asking us all these questions about if we are living together, if we are intimate together, and questions like that, like pretty personal questions. And of course, the answer to most of those was yes. So they're going through, I don't remember what the first lesson or the first thing that they talked to him about, but those questions were part of what we talked about. And they asked him, when I asked them not to, if he would get baptized. And he said yes. Now, I'm not saying that him saying yes was a bad thing, but I just knew he wasn't doing it for the right reasons. He wasn't doing it because he truly believed in something. He was just doing it to do it, pretty much. Like, oh yes, I'll get baptized. So after he said yes, he would get baptized, and they said, okay, well, if you want to get baptized, you either have to move out of here or you guys have to get married. And he was like, oh, okay, well, we could just get married. And I was like, really? So, the missionaries left and we talked about it. And we decided we were going to get married because he wanted to get baptized. And we were living together and he was saying all this stuff to me. And I was like, okay, all right, let's get married then if this is really what you want to do. And I asked him so many times, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because this is a big decision, not just the marriage thing, the baptism as well. Like that is a big decision, but marriage, I guess, is even bigger because that's supposed to be like a lifelong thing. And he, I don't know, he just kind of was like, seemed like he was doing it because it seemed like a good thing to do. Not because he really wanted to or he was like invested, but so when they asked him that and he said, yes, I already know, I was like, he's not saying it for the right reasons. And I was kind of ticked off at the sister missionaries for saying yes to me that they would not ask him. And then they asked him. I'm like, traitors. They're traitors. I couldn't believe it. I was so mad at them for that. But I got over it. I was like, all right, well, it's good that he's coming to the gospel and I'm serving my purpose. I'm supposed to be with him, so he comes to the gospel and he, gets baptized and everything. So I couldn't be mad at them for too long because baptism is a good thing, right? So after he decided to get baptized, like I said, my mom did not like him. So we ended up having a wedding ceremony, a very small private one with just my best friend and her boyfriend and then members of the church. I didn't even tell my mom that we were getting married, that we were having a ceremony. I didn't even tell her. So we got married, we had our ceremony, and things started to get really rough. Like he started to be verbally abusive, even though he was like so gung ho to be in the gospel and so gung ho to get his priesthood, which he had started to work his way. He had already had his Aaronic priesthood and was passing out the sacraments. So he was doing stuff, but eventually he started to be verbally abusive and physically abusive. After we got married, not too long after that, I found out that I was pregnant. And while I was pregnant, we were driving somewhere and he wanted me to take him to a street that I knew that's where you get drugs. And I did not want to take him. I was like, no, I'm not taking you there. And he got so mad at me that he tried to crash the car. I'm driving and he pushed the wheel, tried to crash the car. So I'm trying to stop him from doing that. And I forget what he does, but he like reaches over and he had a watch on his wrist and the little turn dial on the side caught my forehead. And he did something, he reached across and he like smacked me, and as he was pulling like this, it scraped across my forehead. The cops ended up being called on him because of what he did, and when I talked to the bishop and I told him what was going on, I was like, things have gotten really, really bad. And cops were called. I had to tell them what happened, and he wasn't there, so now there's a warrant out for his arrest. And the bishop's advice to me was to have him turn himself in because he had a warrant out. So after he turned himself in, he said have him serve his, it was only like, I think 30 days or 40 or something like that. Not a long time. But he said have him turn himself in, serve his time that he needs to serve, and then when he gets out, the church can help you to pay for somewhere to live. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that the church did that. I didn't ever need any assistance before that. I had no clue. So I was like, really? He said, yes. All I had to do was find an apartment. And I had already, said I had been looking in Pueblo, but I couldn't afford it. So he said, find an apartment in Pueblo and figure out what the deposit, the first and last month's rent, and he could get the church to cut a check for that. And we could move and we could start our family without all of the noise in the environment around us, which it was my ex-husband that was doing all of the extra stuff, making all the extra noise. But where I was at, I guess I made it seem like it was all my mom because she just didn't like him. And the bishop was like, well, you can get away from your family environment and you guys can start your own family and be separate from everyone and have your own family. Now, mind you, my bishop knew he had a drug problem and he had been abusive towards me already. And yet here he is telling me that the church will pay for us to get into an apartment so we could be separate from everybody and start our own family and it just be us. Looking back at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Why? Why would he tell me that? Why would he want me to stay with someone who had a drug addiction and who was abusive? Why would he keep encouraging me? And then encourage me to move to another city and be separate from my family so we could have our own family dynamic. Dangerous. So then when we moved to the next city, you have to meet the bishop, and we met the bishop and our new ward and everything, and things were okay for a little while because, my ex-husband had just gotten out of jail. We had just moved into our new place. Our daughter was only 2 weeks old. So he was kind of like trying to do good again. He was trying to play the role again. So we went to church. We met our new bishop. We were in our new ward. And slowly but surely, things started to go downhill. Like they did before. He started to be abusive again in all the different ways that he was. And at one point I had enough. And I went and I told the bishop, like, he's doing this. He's thrown stuff at me. I've had bruises from him. He says all kinds of stuff to me. He is constantly just leaving. I have no idea where he's at. Then he comes back and he's horrible to me. Like I am just an inconvenience to him. And the new bishop, he was a nice guy too. But he asked me if I was praying. Was I reading my scriptures? Was I doing what I needed to do as a wife to support my husband and to help him get through these hard things that he was dealing with, these demons he was dealing with? So he was victim blaming pretty much. It was my fault. It was my fault because I wasn't praying enough. I wasn't reading my scriptures. I wasn't being diligent about it. So therefore, my husband was being this way towards me because I wasn't being faithful enough. I wasn't being the example. And it made me second guess myself like, well, maybe it is my fault. maybe I'm not being a good wife. Maybe I'm not being as faithful. Maybe this is punishment from Heavenly Father because I'm not being as faithful in my studies and I'm not being faithful in the gospel. Like, I pretty much have stepped away from the covenants that I made because being with my ex-husband, it was a lot. I had started to drink a little bit again. I started to smoke cigarettes a little bit again because it was just like stress. We were away from everybody. It was like that's what I felt that I could turn to. So it was just not good. But talking to the bishop made me second guess myself. Like it's me. And so I continued to be with him and stayed and continued to deal with it, continued to think that it was me, that it was my fault what was happening, and I was trying to be the best wife that I could, be the best Mormon that I could, trying to do everything by the book how I was supposed to, and it never got better. It continued to get worse, and then I found out he was cheating. So when I went to talk to the bishop and tell him, like, okay, look, I found out he is cheating on me. What do I do? He is sleeping with other people. He's not taking this seriously. Meanwhile, he's being abusive to me. He's not being a father to our daughter. Like, what do I do? And again, the bishop asked me what I doing what I needed to do as a wife, physically, because men have needs. Then he proceeded to tell me how he was not a good husband at first and how he had cheated on his wife and she almost left him, but he realized how wrong he was in his ways and he changed and he begged her for another chance and she gave it to him, and now look where he was. He was a bishop. So men could change. He could change. I just needed to be faithful and endure and be with him, like how his wife stuck by him and how she was. But in all honesty, she didn't trust her husband completely all the way. I remember when it had been a long time since I had seen the bishop, and I only met his wife like one or two times, so she didn't really like recognize me or know who I was. And I saw him and his wife in the grocery store, and he recognized me and he said hi to me, and we were talking for a second. And he turned to his wife and she had this look on his face and he was like, oh, she's from the ward. And, he said something else and she was like, oh, okay. So she still didn't trust her husband. She had stuck by him, but that trust was never really truly fully restored. I'm sure she never really looked at him the same. Even though she loved him, that was her husband, and she stuck by him, that particular trust was always gone. And he told me I should talk to her. So that way I could hear from her how she endured and how she got through it and how what she did to help her. So he was still encouraging me to stay in this relationship with a drug addict who was abusive and now being unfaithful to me. It's crazy when I say it out loud and I'm saying it to the camera, because I've only ever thought about this stuff in my head, but saying it out loud makes me realize the mind state that the church puts you in, feeling like you need to ask the bishop, you need to ask the church pretty much permission. You have to ask the bishop if anything's going wrong. What is his advice for you? What should you do? It like makes you completely codependent. You don't trust yourself anymore. You feel like you can't make your own decisions for yourself. You need another opinion. And you're willing to follow what someone else says, even though in your mind it might be like, oh, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem right. But you're still willing to go along with it because they make you believe and drill it into you that you need the church. You need the gospel. You need to talk to your bishop. You need to know what Heavenly Father wants of you, because the bishop is the mouthpiece. So he's the one you talk to. He's the one you listen to. It like completely takes away any sort of self-knowledge, any trust in yourself. You don't listen to yourself anymore. It completely blocks your intuition. And it's crazy to think that I know I'm not the only one who was encouraged and even blamed for their situation, for being abused, for being treated badly. And I'm sure that it's more women than men, because watching Mormon Story podcasts and realizing how many men in high positions take advantage of their authority and do things that they're not supposed to do, that are illegal, that are abusive, that commit horrible crimes against children, just other people, other women, even other men. Like, the church protects them. The church protects these types of men, and they don't care about the women. They don't hear our voices. I was encouraged for 2 years to stay with somebody who I had repeatedly told my bishop, 2 different bishops, he's doing this. This is how I'm being treated. This is what I'm going through. I've already tried this. I've tried this. I'm reading scripts. I'm doing everything I've been told, and this is still happening. But I'm still being encouraged to stay with him, to continue to help him work through it. Meanwhile, I'm being abused in the meantime. They're more willing to sacrifice you so they can keep another member, because they wanted so badly for him to have the priesthood and to work with him to get the priesthood, and they wanted to work with him so much and would have, private meetings with him. Do you think that they did that with me? Do you think that the bishop checked in on me to ask how I was coping with everything, how I was handling everything? No. They checked in with him, though, not with me. It was like, well, you're just here to support your husband and help him get through this. So you just have to endure it. That's your job. That's what your position is as his wife. Endure all of the BS he's putting you through in the name of the gospel, in the name of him being a member of the church and helping him to be saved and make it back to Heavenly Father. Meanwhile, I'm being beaten down mentally, emotionally. I have no more confidence in myself. I have no more trust in myself, because not only is the church over here, you need us, you need us, you need us, you can't make your own decisions, but I also have who he ends up being a narcissist. Like, he has all the characteristics of a narcissist. All the tactics that he used, my ex-husband, everything. So, meanwhile, I'm here with this narcissist and nobody cares. It's like, well, he needs the gospel. You need to be with him. We need a member. So, too bad for you. Horrible. So eventually, after just dealing with my ex-husband's continued abuse, I finally was like, you know what? I'm not going to church anymore. He had already been telling people stuff that was not true about me and how I was and what he was dealing with, when really it was the other way around. So I didn't go to church anymore. I stopped going to church, and eventually I was like, I cannot be with him anymore. I have to get away from him, because if this continues in another 2 years, I'm either going to be dead, he's going to have had me put in jail because he's going to have turned something around on me. My daughter's going to be taken away. She's going to be in the system because we're going to be fighting. Like, something had to change. And I decided I had to get away from him. So I did. I did not listen to my bishop anymore. I did not want to hear what he had to say. I didn't ask him anything else. And I got away from my ex-husband. He did not know where I was. He couldn't get a hold of me. He had no idea where we lived. And that's exactly how I wanted it, because I knew he had the capability of really, really hurting me. I had seen it, and I did not want it to go any farther. So I was very proud of myself when I decided to just get away from him. But pretty much after that point, I did not go to church for a long, long time because I kind of felt burnt by the church a little bit at that point. Like I had gone to two different bishops for guidance and for protection, and I didn't receive that. I received the opposite of that. I was encouraged to stay in that environment, to stay in the abuse, to stay in all of the chaos that I was in. And not just me, but to keep my daughter there as well. So I'm very glad that I decided not to listen anymore and to listen to myself, because I would be in such a bad place right now if I did not make that decision for myself. So eventually, when I decided to start going back to church, because I was like, you know what, I'm not going to let this situation stop me from my faith, because I was a member of this church before I met him, and I was a strong member. I felt like my faith was strong, even though I felt like I didn't really fit in and whatnot. But I still felt like that had changed my life, and that's what I was doing before he came along. And I wasn't going to let him change that. I wasn't going to let him push me away from that, because that's what he wanted. So I started going back to church again when my daughter and I moved back to the city that I was from. And I remember I told my story in Relief Society, and then the bishop in the ward wanted to meet with me. So I said, okay, and I met with him. And he asked me about my story, and I was, telling him about my ex-husband, and who we were still married at the time. So I was telling him about my husband, and at the end of everything, he asked me, so there was nothing that you could have done that could have saved your marriage? There was nothing that you possibly could have done, or you could have stuck around with him? So even the new bishop, I was like, he's over here trying to blame me too. So I stopped going to the new ward. I had barely started going back to church, and I was like, nope, still can't go to church. And it pretty much happened like that. I was in two other wards after that. And it happened the same in the other wards. Like, it was always asking me, well, there was nothing that you could have done that could have saved your marriage. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, no, there was nothing that I could have done, because I did everything I was told to do. I did everything I possibly could, and still it didn't work. So I just felt like I was, even though it wasn't being said to me, I felt like I was being told I was unworthy because I couldn't save my marriage, because I didn't pray enough, I didn't have enough faith, whatever the reason was. It was me, and I was the problem. So I just decided, you know what? This doesn't make me feel comfortable going to this church anymore. So I stopped physically going there. And I always told myself, I know the gospel is always true, but humans are not perfect. And humans are the ones that run the church here on earth. So of course it's not going to be perfect, but the gospel will always be true. So that thought right there got me through the times of going to a new ward and the same thing happening. It was like being disappointed over and over and over again. So that thought is what helped me get through that. So looking back over my whole relationship with my ex-husband and everything I went through and all the advice that I was given and all of the encouragement to stay with him that I was given, it made me realize that the church would have rather me stay in this abusive relationship. And I'm going to say the church, because every single ward that I was in, when I was married, the bishop, always the first two bishops, they encouraged me to stay. The second bishop and all the other bishops asked what I was doing to save the marriage. It was on me. So I'm going to say the church encouraged me to stay with this person and would have rather me stayed in this relationship, being abused and everything, so they could gain a member and keep that member. And why wouldn't the church encourage me to stay in an abusive relationship? Because being a member of the church is an abusive relationship in itself. And I've already made a video about that. You can find that on my page if you want to go watch that. But why wouldn't they encourage me to stay in this abusive relationship when they are in an abusive relationship themselves? Of course they're going to encourage you to stay. Now, one thing that really helped me to get over the hurdle in my mind of, well, it was my fault. I should have been doing more. I could have done more. It's me. After watching so many different Mormon story podcasts and different videos about narcissists, because I did a lot of research on narcissists, because I was like, my husband was a certain way. Crazy, volatile, unpredictable. The tactics that he used, the mind games that he played. I found out he was a narcissist. So all of this stuff I was going through, it was not me. It was him. And watching everything about what tactics that narcissists used, and then the different Mormon story podcasts, I realized the church victim blamed. They blamed me for the abuse that I went through. And so many of the Mormon story podcasts that I watched that had to do with somebody who endured abuse by an elder in the church, or someone that they knew, a man in the church who held a position of authority, they were all blamed pretty much. And the man was protected. It was like, well, these are demons that he has to get over, and we have to help him. But no sort of care or therapy for the victims, no sort of checking up on them to see how they're doing, getting through everything, how they're coping, no advice on how to get over being a victim, how to heal from it, none of that. Just, well, you had something to do with it. It was, you didn't have enough faith. You didn't do X, Y, Z. And so therefore this is happening to you, and this is why, because you didn't have enough faith. And that is so dangerous. So dangerous. Because that mentality right there will keep you in an abusive relationship, will keep you in this same cycle, and you'll continue to do the same thing over and over again, to go through the same thing, to have the highs and lows, and you'll just be stuck. And that's what they want. They want you to be stuck, so you can't think for yourself, you can't choose for yourself, and you'll just blindly follow what they want, what they're requesting of you, what they say is good or bad or righteous or evil. It's all control. It's all control. But deciding not to be a member of the church anymore and stepping away and doing all of this research to figure out, what was going on with my husband, and hearing all of these different stories about other people who went through the same thing, it has helped me to heal and made me realize it was not me. I was being blamed for something that was not my fault, that was completely out of my hands. And there's nothing more that I could have done to try to make the situation better. I did everything I could have possibly done. And even though my marriage did not work out, I'm still worthy of love. I am still worthy of a good partner. I'm still worthy of being treated nicely, being treated well, of my love being reciprocated. And knowing that has not just boosted the confidence in myself, but has really helped me to learn my worth. More than being a member of the church has helped me to learn my worth. Having to go through all of that and the church encouraging me to stay and being abused and being victim blamed has helped me realize everything that I went through, and has helped me to open my eyes to the lessons that I was supposed to learn from those things. I was supposed to learn to trust myself, to listen to my intuition, to be more connected to my inner being. Because the intuition that's inside of us, the Holy Ghost, that's our intuition, and it's taught me to be more connected to that. And being more connected to that helps me learn more and more who I am, how awesome I really am. I mean, I have gotten through so many things. I am so strong. I have endured so much, and I came out of it on the other side, and I feel like I'm victorious. I have defeated these things, and now I'm in a position where I want to help others defeat these things as well, because there's so many people that the church has beat it into their head that they can't trust themselves and they are not worthy. And I want you to know that no matter what anybody says, you are worthy, you are worth it, and you are loved unconditionally. Thank you for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Mwah. Bye.